So there we go. I got that going. Okay, so my name is Victoria Parisi, and I have volunteered for the position of the chair of the Clark School Exploration Committee, which is a subcommittee of the Joint Facilities Advisory Committee, which is an appointed group through SAU 39 School Board. And that was formed back in 2018. So we have been in existence. It's not something new, but our subcommittee is completely new. So the mission of our subcommittee is to gather input from community experts and stakeholders on possible ways to utilize the Clark School building and site should the proposal by the Amherst School District to build a new elementary school to house pre-K through 5th grade be approved by the voters in the future. So while I wanted to make sure that I read that to get that clear, what we're doing is we've been tasked with figuring out all possible options and bringing them back to the subcommittee mid-May. So we are, or back to the larger committee mid-May. So they've given us kind of that whole free reign. And while the four of us began talking, the way we kind of see it is that it has maybe one of 5 futures. One future is that it gets sold for commercial. One future is that it gets sold for residential. And of course, these are broad topics, right? One future is that it's raised for green space. Another future is that part of the building is saved and used for something by someone, either a town or foundation or something like that. And another is that the entirety of the building is used, by the town or foundation. And that brings us to kind of sitting here with all of you and saying, what are the interests? What are the possibilities? Nick sent a bunch of files over this morning. So I was able to send those over to everyone this afternoon, which I realize is day of and tricky. But she sent some files about the property. So we have some information. And I guess the biggest point that I just want to make sure that everyone understands is that I obviously cannot say, I'm not the deciding factor on anything. I am just supposed to be bringing ideas and asking the questions and bringing those back to our smaller subcommittee and then also to the larger, we call it JFAC. And then of course the Amherst School Board, who has the final say on what we're going to do. But the future plan is what you've all seen on the website, which is to build a new Clark Wilkins, which means that students are not in Clark anymore. So the future of having students inside Clark the plan is to have that go away. So that's where we're at. So I don't know if you guys want to jump in, or I have a list of questions that we have that maybe somebody on here can answer for us. I'm not sure how, what anybody has for thoughts. Oh, Peter, you're on mute.
Thank you. Yeah. I have questions, but one, I guess, probably at the outset would be, and I suspect it isn't really determined yet, but if things were to go according to what you would like, when would the school become available?
Sure, that's a great question. So the school board plans to put this on in March of 22. And from what I understand, and Roger, you can confirm this, I believe it's like a 3 to 5 year window that we'll still be using the building before we get into the new facilities. Is that correct?
That is correct. It depends on the phasing for the Wilkins AMS. We want to build Wilkins first so that we can use Wilkins to house AMS and not need portables is the discussion that we're having right now. So it's around 3 to 5 years is the best way that we can describe it at this point. Minimum being 3 years, maximum being 5 after the projects were done.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any thoughts? Bill?
Just one question. It's an older building. Has it ever been surveyed for asbestos and lead paint? And do we know anything about the condition of the building with respect to those items?
Sure. Roger?
I do have some manuals in my office that I have not had the opportunity to go through yet, but I know that the building underwent a renovation in 2008, and it got a sprinkler system. I'm trying to just get the information in there. That was one of my topics that I wanted to bring up is a lot of the building's major systems have been redone. The flat portion of Clark, that roof was done in 2011. The septic was just done in 2018. Thank you for those plans because that was part of your package that you sent out, Victoria, that I got those. So that was great. And then it underwent a major renovation in 2008, I believe. And I bring up 2008 because we had deficiencies with the sprinkler systems that we were notified in 13, which we should have done. And then with the install was 5 years earlier than that. So I guess some of the pluses for Clark is a lot of that building has been gone through as far as the renovation. But to answer your question, I needed to dig a little bit deeper as far as the asbestos and what we still have within the building, if anything.
I actually can help out with that. Roger, I just spoke with Nancy Head today, who was involved in the renovations to both Clark, Wilkins, and AMS that happened in 2008, 2009. I believe by a company called an architectural firm by the name of Marinase. And she indicated to me today, she's actually going to bring over the folder that has all of the information about it. But she indicated to me, I'm just going to give you a list of the things that they did at Clark. New windows and doors, sprinkler system, new heating, emergency lights, replacing boiler, install new ventilators, and asbestos abatement. So all of those things happened supposedly in 2008 and 9.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And I found it here. It's installation of new mechanical and electrical systems throughout selected areas of the project, which were the MPR areas. They did new ceilings. They did a small renovations on the current nurse's office. They modified the existing stairwell for the lift system that was installed there. And that's another good thing about Clark is it doesn't have an elevator, but it does have a lift, which does make it ADA compliant to move around the building and as far as getting people out of the building as well. And then in 2008, it looks like there was an art room renovation where the boiler was installed as well. There's 2 boilers there. They installed a new Buderus in 2009, but the existing Wells McLean is actually, before I started here, that was identified as failed, but it's a rebuildable boiler. So you can actually take sections out and just rebuild it and replace the rope gaskets as well. And it's a very common boiler. So like supply houses actually stock those sections right on the shelf. So that's a plus is what I'm getting at for that system there. So a lot of work has been done there, which is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I suspect that part of the reason you're interested in leaving the school behind is because it's deficient in what it has, in terms of what the school district needs for classrooms, et cetera, in the future. But can we also look kind of the reverse of what we just spoke of, and what do we know that needs to be done to the building?
Sure. So part of the reason that we're looking to leave it behind is to put everyone in the same building. Once you are able to put pre-K through 5 in the same building, you're able to slim down all different things, and it just makes the most sense. And the Clark School property is very finite, and there's nowhere to go really to house all those kids. So things that need to be done, it will need siding. I will say that's my thing, that whenever I walk through there, I'm always like, oh my gosh, we need to fix this. So that's the most visual for me. What else is on your radar, Roger, that would be important to share?
I'll share the Clark CNA report with you so that you can send out to everyone, and that way they can see just the assessment on that.
Sure.
But it's definitely the siding, like you're saying, and then the 2 shingled portions. Those are coming due. I wouldn't say that they're due anytime soon, but probably within the next 5 to 10 years. Maybe about time that this building gets turned over. Those shingled roofs definitely are going to need to be done at that time. And then it's just looking into the paving. whether or not we put money into that as well, but the parking lot is going to need paving. And then I'm also working on the fuel source for Clark right now. Right now, Clark has an above ground storage tank that sits on the side parking lot. It's actually just a big cylinder holding 2,000 gallons of diesel fuel. It is a double walled tank, but quite frankly, there's a parking area there. And if there was ever an accident or anybody ever pulled in there and that tank ever got clipped or hit, we would have just a kind of an environmental hazard. So we are just looking into just installing really more bollards so that it takes the impact rather than the tank taking the impact. And I have some history just from our guy on site, our guy Paul there, is apparently that tank was in a different location and then it moved to a new location. There was some moving of that tank that has happened. So I would say that the roof and then thinking about that tank and then considering paving as well. And then depending what that building becomes is there is a playground there, which that just should be considered of whatever that building does become.
Could
Peter,
someone
oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, could someone confirm whether there's a portable behind Clark or not?
There is not.
Okay, because it is listed in the tax records as being, assessed at $46,000. So I don't, and it's owned by GE Corporation or something. So I don't know. I'd sort of like to know the status, like when it disappeared, and if it disappeared, it needs to be disappeared from the tax records as well, I would think.
I'll follow up with that with Roger.
Okay.
Will, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Peter and maybe Dean or Nick, do you know if there was ever, and thinking back to when the town hall was renovated, did the town ever at one time or recently do a space needs assessment for office space or things that they couldn't get in the town hall but were farmed out to another location? I was just wondering if there was any study that was done for the needs
So
for the town hall.
I don't have recall of such, Will, but I would expect there probably was one done prior to the renovation.
Prior to the renovation, yeah.
Yeah, and you might have a better guess on when that renovation was than I do. I look at that cornerstone once in a while, but I don't remember the year on it.
Yeah, I think, Jim O'Mara was the town administrator then, so it was probably.
So that would make it 2012 on.
Yeah, 12, 13-ish, I was thinking.
And actually, I think it was, now that I think it was prior to that.
Yeah, it's probably in
But,
one of the
yeah.
town, yeah, we could find that real
So, I
quick.
mean, I think the
Town
bottom
report.
line is that certainly the town, and I don't want to, please don't read into what I'm saying, but the town could certainly use more office space than what it has. And we have a recreation department, which is down at the other end of town, et cetera. So certainly we could use, in a perfect world, we could use more office space than what we have. I don't know if that translates into the Clark School being a good source for that or not.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, part of my I have concerns, about as I already expressed, the current condition of the building and what the investment would look like if we were to go in that direction. I have concerns that the building is more than what we need. And so what would we do to try to work through that? And obviously, if we went in that direction, I'm sure we could find needs that we don't even realize at this time.
Right.
But I speak for myself because I can't speak for anyone else. It's sort of an interesting and exciting opportunity, but it's one which I approach with a lot of caution also, to be quite honest.
Yep. I think that's how all of us are approaching this also. We've all heard about the town master plan survey, and we've gone through and People talk to us about senior housing, and people talk to us about our senior center or a community center or more green space, or, all these different things. And having the conversation with the town is the first step, right? Because if we're sitting over on our little JFAT group saying, well, we should do something great with the school, that's wonderful, but that doesn't really, turn into anything.
Sure.
So and making sure that we have all of you in for this conversation as it begins really leads to wherever the conversation goes down the road. We don't expect anyone to all of a sudden say, yes, give us the building tomorrow and we're good and we've got a plan for it. Obviously, we know there's a lot of people behind the scenes who need to be clued in on any type of conversation like that.
I remember for decades, conversations going back and forth about the brick school when the brick school was vacant before the SAU offices were there, and we had so many brick school study committees going back and forth over the years before anything happened with it. And I'm talking probably 15 years worth before anything happened. So hopefully we can avoid that here. So
yes, so our goal is to be kind of ready to roll with something, right? So that as part of the whole package that we explain, here's what's happening with the new Clark Wilkins, we also have a piece that says, and here's what's happening with Clark. We have thought about this and we do have a plan for this. While we know that, on the inside, we know that this is a little bit early because we know that we're going to use it for 3 to 5 years. I think it's also really important to share with the community that we do know that this is a question that the community has also.
Yeah.
I
think
Phil had-
also, I'm sorry.
You both did.
Okay, I'll ask my
Yeah.
question.
Oh,
Who controls the property right now? Who's going to have the final say on what happens to this?
It's a great question. I believe that's the Amherst School Board.
So the school board owns the property, or does the
School.
town own the property?
School district.
School
Yeah,
district.
I'd say school district, the Amherst School District.
And that's a separate legal entity from the town of Amherst
Yes.
with authority to acquire and sell property?
I don't know the answer to that. It's a good question.
From my understanding, it is. I believe that the school district owns certain properties that are leased by the town. Or that the town, I think there are some agreements there. I'm not sure if anybody else on the call has more formal information than that.
Yeah, it's a separate government agency, so they do, I'm sure the school district does own it. And I know Bill had a question, but I'd just like to say just real quickly, I've never been in the building, so I'm not really sure how it's set up, but I will say that my last job before here was Hooksett. And that's what they did up there. They had an old town hall, although their old town hall was not in the shape that this is in. It was in tough shape, and they moved over to a school building that the school district sold them for $1, and they just did the renovations they needed to, and that worked out very well for them. But I don't really know what's in the building over here, so can't speak to that.
Victoria, I was just thinking as we're here, just sort of BSing a little bit, that I think part of this group should be, people that live in the immediate neighborhood, because I think their voice needs to be heard just as much as anybody, because, it's probably going to change their expectations, their lifestyle over there. So it would be good to get, I think, 1 or 2 members of the immediate neighborhood to get their buy-in, to get their ideas, to see what they would prefer. Because I just think we owe that to the people there.
Yep, we definitely.
Or maybe there's some people that are on this subcommittee that are on Foundry Street, or at least immediately in that vicinity.
Yep. So this meeting is just our first connection with the town experts. We're calling you guys as the town experts. There's another layer that comes next in about 2 weeks where we engage with those neighborhood stakeholders. And then, along the way, we engage with slightly further out and further out. There's layers engagement. So yes,
Good.
we agree, and I think it's important for us to engage the village, and it's important for us to engage the whole community too.
Yeah, I think what was a good model, recent model, was what the ACC did with the Buck Meadow property and how they got the neighborhoods involved and, got them really into the decision-making process and took some, the ideas going forward. So I thought that was very good of the ACC to do that.
Absolutely.
And could I just say something? Oh, I'm sorry. Bill?
No, go ahead, Dean.
Since you're talking about the neighbors and stuff, I guess I'd just like to throw out there that and I'll be gone before any of this happens, so it doesn't matter. But if the town moved there, the traffic would be much less than to the town hall here. I mean, if people are worried about traffic, because I can't picture, and once again, it's up to the selectmen ultimately, but I can't picture moving parts of the town hall like the town clerk, the tax collector, the downstairs main people, I would presume, would stay in this building because this would still be the town hall. What that would end up being is something like a town annex or town office building. And I presume what would go over there, just because of the setup and because they would use it best, would be the community development people. And Nick's here, she could speak to that. But if there was space over there for the planning board, for the conservation commission, someplace to lay maps out when developers came in. Right now, we don't have any of that here. We go digging down the basement for maps that aren't as old as they need to be. So that would end up being more of a community development annex, I believe. And given that, if the neighbors are concerned about all the traffic, everybody in town coming to the town clerk there, I don't suspect that will ever happen. So that's just something to throw out there.
Yeah, so I'll tack onto that and say I think the traffic, to whatever extent, could occur as a result of scheduled events or that kind of thing using that all-purpose room. Still, probably in comparison to what happens over there now for parent nights and whatnot, probably less than what neighbors expect at this time. So.
Your turn now, Bill.
All right. So just another kind of random thought. The planning board and other parts of the town are kind of at the beginning of our master planning process. And given your time frame, I just wonder whether, one of the themes in the master plan should be looking at or helping to look at future use of that property.
Could I follow up to that? Bill, I think you're really onto something, because that was one of the things I wasn't sure that the master plan had actually factored in terms of questions, was really trying to get a pulse on what the future needs of the community are, and how those could be met through places like Clark School. In terms of, being a community center, or providing office space, as Dean has described, is sort of an annex to the town hall, or potentially moving the children's library over to Clark School. The thing is, the beauty of the Clark School, and if we can sort of open our minds, is that it could serve all of those needs simultaneously. And that's why I think it's helpful maybe to find out what people in the community would like to see in terms of space, because I think as long as I've lived here, people have complained that there isn't enough meeting space, or there's always where's the pub or where's the coffee shop or whatever, you know, in the village. So all of those themes, as you say, continue to come up, but it would be really nice to actually, you know, be able to ask that question and find out from people what they really think.
Yeah, I think as we develop the themes for the master plan, I think that definitely fits, you know, the Clark School fits right in there to one of the to be determined themes yet. And they haven't been determined, but it's now's a good opportunity if we have 3 or 4 years before anything is really going to result from this. But, you know, I agree, you know, add it into the master plan process.
Jeannie, are you advocating for a pub?
Not on Foundry Street, I'm not.
I think though that the town hall annex would be nice to have a coffee shop in it. I mean, I think.
There you
That
go.
would
I love
work.
it.
Are there other questions that anyone has about any of it, about the process, about, I know it's a big conversation to have, so.
So I have a question regarding the SAU offices and whether or not any thought has gone toward the need of the SAU offices in the future, if there's sufficient space at the Brick School or if there are other considerations.
Sure. We've been told to look at we're keeping the Brick School and we're not going to keep Clark.
Okay.
So.
I don't know how long-lived this group will be. I mean, but if we're going to be doing more, I for one would love to see the school. I have never been in it. I've been over there, but not in the school, and to kind of give some reasonable thoughts about how it might be reused, particularly other than for town uses, if that's something that the people want to consider. It would help me a great deal, at least, to see the school and see how it's set up now.
Okay, I can follow up with that, see what our options are. And I guess, you know, when we say we're not sure what this group really looks like and how, you know, how we're going to, you know, function in the future, I did not want to reach out to any of you and ask you to be on a committee, because I think when you're already volunteering or have a job that requires you to go to lots of committee meetings, you can get a little burned out on that. I would love, our subcommittee would love to have as much involvement from you as you're willing or able to give, but we also want you to understand that we know that your time is precious and that you're focused on something else that's equally as important, just like we're all focused on the school side of it. So don't want anyone to feel pressure to do either way, but we would love to have more involvement.
So Victoria, I would like to invite your committee or the larger committee to a Board of Selectmen meeting whenever it seems appropriate.
Sure.
In order to, among other things, get your message out to the community, whatever that may be, and maybe also have a dialogue back and forth whenever that seems appropriate to you.
Thank you. That's great. I know Amy Facey and Shannon Gascoigne, I think, had presented to you all at some point last year.
Yes.
But having them come back would be wonderful, or us, but we tend to pawn that off on the two of them. Tracy, did you have your hand up?
I did, thank you. I've worked a lot at hospital systems, and I've just noticed through the years that there's always a long line of interested parties when new space becomes available. And I love the things that we've talked about as potentially going into that building if it's chosen to maintain the building. But have you heard it from anyone else that has kind of come to kind of talk with you about the potential of getting into that building?
So our first step was to go to the town.
Okay.
We wanted to make sure that everyone, I know this is going to maybe sound silly or a little bit corny, but I just wanted to make sure that there was like a mutual respect that was built between our Clark Exploration Committee and everyone who's working in the town. Didn't want anyone to feel like, you know, we had gone to the highest bidder outside of going to the town first. Our plan is to set up with some local realtors to see if there's interest what they know about the local market. Is there interest in, in going certain directions with that? So that's one of the next steps. But no, we don't have anybody knocking on the door saying, we want your building for a certain reason or purpose.
Great,
But
thank you.
I'm not sure that anybody knows until all of you. I feel like it's one of those little kept secrets that, the word is trying to get out there. And I think the hardest part really is understanding that this is the path that the school district or the school board has chosen, and it's going to happen. So what are we going to do with it? Rather than thinking, oh, it's just, just a group talking about getting rid of the school, but we're not really at that point. We're at a further point in the process where we all really need to realize that it's going to happen. So what are the options and who wants to be in on that option? And somehow they gave me this task of going ahead and talking to everyone and breaking the news. So, but it's
You're doing a good job, and I appreciate your stepwise approach. Go with the town first, and then you've got other stakeholders and potential candidates that you're going to get to eventually. I think that's a good plan.
Yeah, yep, I think so. I think Christine, so I'm not sure if I didn't really introduce anybody, but Christine, Josh, and Jeannie are the other part of my subcommittee who jumped on to support this endeavor. And then Roger is our director of facilities for SAU 39. So that's why I keep pitching to Roger on anything building related. So I have some questions that our subcommittee had come up with. So I just want to check over them, see if any of them are worth mentioning or if we've talked about them. The great news is that we've hit upon many of these. One of our questions was, how difficult would it be to transfer ownership of the Clark School from the Amherst School District to the town of Amherst, and what that process looks like? Dean, you said that you had some experience with that up in Hooksett, right? So
Well, they did it before I got there, but I mean, it's really just a sale. They just turned the deed over. They just sold it for $1 and that was that. I mean, it's easy.
okay. Let's see. Nick had shared some information about how it's zoned rural residential. So I see from that means that there's some commercial uses, obviously, that could not go in there. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So the town split into different districts, and the residential rural is, descriptive in telling you what can happen there. And I did distribute what those things could be, but basically 1 and 2 family dwellings and the things that you would associate with a residential district.
Okay.
And the other important aspect is that it's situated directly on the stratified drift aquifer. So there are considerations there in terms of groundwater resources and protection. So there might be certain things that are, not allowed or need to have some care taken to make sure that nothing can get down into the water.
Okay.
I'll look into that oil tank sooner.
It was something that had me a little nervous.
No, I know, and that's why I'm glad that I'm glad you brought that up, because I was wondering about that, and I'm like, wow, that's great information. This meeting has benefited me in so many ways. I'm happy about this committee.
Yeah, you need a little containment.
So I don't want you losing any sleep, but just to expand on that aquifer, it is one of the largest and most transmissive aquifers in this area, meaning that anything gets into it quickly moves, and it moves. It ultimately feeds water supplies for Merrimack. It goes into the Merrimack River. I mean, it's a big deal aquifer, that and the one under Buck Meadow. So protection and the district that is there to protect that aquifer really focuses on keeping hazardous materials out of the water supply. So the things that would be of concern would be any type of use that would generate or run the risk of some sort of hazardous material getting into the ground, number one. And number two, we worry about septic. just because there's nitrates. There's a lot of nitrates, and nitrates are harmful in drinking water, harmful to humans in drinking water at high levels. And septic systems tend to put very high levels of nitrates into the water. So, but a properly designed system is fine. Obviously, I mean, we're using them all over town. So bollards would be great. Anything you can do to keep that
Yeah.
from.
Can I assume that the new septic system that was put in 2018 met all of the requirements, not to, to be built in a way that would not contaminate an aquifer? I assume somebody confirm that.
Yeah, well, I do know, I wasn't here, Jeannie, but I do know Ty and Bond is the actual civil that did the job. I'm looking at the plans here. They're one of the best in the state as far as designing systems like this and being the site engineer. And typically you're not going to put anything like this, a new septic in, without getting all of the permits first anyway. So I would say with my experience with Ty and Bond and seeing the stamped drawings, I would say that I feel pretty good about it, yes.
Back to that oil tank for a minute. If you look at it and I mean, it seems to me that there may be it may be in a concrete pool already. They may put concrete under it to catch anything. But if there's not something like that, you should call our building inspector and have him take a look and see if he can come up with something to make sure that there may be an easier, cheaper way than to lift that thing up and could have put concrete under it. But you might want to do something with that, especially if it's an older tank.
Yeah, definitely. It was actually I looked into this in 1997, there was an underground tank on site and it was removed. And for some reason, this 2,000 gallon above ground tank was put in its place. But the DES was never notified of the tank being put in its place. So I've already registered the tank with the DES since I've been here on site. And I've actually took them down there and we did an inspection on it. We had another incident came up at Village School with their fuel piping, and we had to change some stuff at Wilkins School as well. So that's just our next step there as far as it's a double wall tank is the good thing. It just has one big, I think it's like a 12 by 12 wood bollard in front of it, and it just needs to be concrete with metal and multiple of them around it as well.
Another question on here is, as we begin this exploratory process, what would you want us to know that we may not be thinking about? Any thoughts? Or is there anyone else that you would suggest that we talk to during this process, either town related or otherwise? I know Will has mentioned the neighbors.
I feel like our discussion has led through a lot of that. The neighbors, the other constituents. Yeah.
Yep.
And then even if the town didn't want to take it on fully, would the town also maybe want to take it on and use it for like facilities use, maybe start a facilities use program? I know at the schools, I mean, not because of COVID lately, but typically on a normal school year, we have everybody coming in and using classrooms, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. I mean, there's an opportunity there to make somewhat of a profit. And it's, I mean, for me, I guess Clark is it's a great location and it's a good building. I mean, it's got minor work to come in the future, but I mean, it's mechanicals, electrical and plumbing. I mean, those are sound. And I always just, I walk the green all the time, and I love Clark's location. Just something about it. It doesn't work for us as a school because we're running multiple buildings and programming in 2 buildings and just the number of classrooms there, but it's a really good building. What was it before a school? I have something saying that it changed over to a school in 1994, but what was it before then?
No, it was a
No,
school.
37.
Oh,
Yeah, I think it was built
always
as a school.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
good to know.
I think, Jeannie, was 1994 one of the additions?
I'd have to look back. I just did a whole thing on the brief history of Clark School, so I'll send that to you, Roger. But it was originally built as a 2-room schoolhouse in 1937 on what was called Bussy Field, I'm not really sure how to pronounce it, which was a playground, and it was donated by Fanny Clark. And that's hence the name Clark School. The land was donated. And then it slowly grew over time. They add another 2 rooms, which is the way everything in Amherst happens, very slowly. And eventually, let's see, I think if I can find this real quickly. In the 50s, 2 rooms were added. Quickly after that, in 55, another 2 rooms. In 1963, another 4 classrooms. And in 1978, there was an enlargement. The final one was actually in 1995, and that's the multi-purpose room that you see at the end. And that was built mainly with private funds in memory of one of the teachers who had died, and it was definitely a work of love.
That's great info. Any info like that, Jeannie, if you could share it, that'd be great.
Sure.
Jeannie,
you.
if you want to go ahead and send it to me, I'll send it out to everyone on this call along with Roger's CNA.
Okay, will do.
And I guess, so that's good info, because I brought that up because that CNA, I believe, says converted to a school in 1994. That's why I asked that question. So thank you, Jeannie.
So I don't want to keep everybody on a call longer than we need to be. I've appreciated everyone's time. It sounds like there's not many other questions at this point to kind of touch upon. I'm going to send across a couple of those emails and then also try to see what, I know with COVID, I'm curious what our opportunities would be to see the school, but I'll try to figure something out and get back in touch with everyone, if that sounds good.
I can help assist with that too.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll let everybody go. Thank you, guys. Thank you all for
Thank you.
coming. I
Thanks, Victoria.
appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Victoria. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Good job.
Yep,
Nice.
seeing
This is
everybody.
great.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.